What NBA player right now, in this day, in this time, right now, do you think you'd have the best chance at beating in a 1v1 competition? 1v1 basketball to 7.
This is kind of a gruesome answer, but I'm taking Yusuf Nurkic.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. The Brooklyn Nets this offseason came out of left field, at least to some people, and landed Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, while keeping most of their roster outside of D'Angelo Russell, and they also added DeAndre Jordan, as well as Garrett Temple, who's a very solid 3-and-D player. Now, to me, this didn't come out of left field, because I had the Nets as the best landing spot for Kevin Durant. Much better than the Knicks, Durant could go to Brooklyn and still play in New York while playing for a much better ran franchise with a much better culture. Anything to take a shot at the Knicks. Now, even though this did not come out of left field for me, I can completely understand why some people were surprised by Durant's as well as Kyrie Irving's decision to go to the Brooklyn Nets. Even though last year was great for the Nets and they became the darling of the NBA, when you look at the history of the Brooklyn Nets, it is not pretty. The Nets used to be a total and complete zero, but they have quickly become a hero. Another analogy could be the Nets used to be Giannis in his rookie year, and now they are MVP Giannis. So let's talk about how the Nets went from zero to hero, or to rookie Giannis to MVP Giannis.
Rebound. Save. Absolutely incredibly with the acrobatic alley-oop.
As you heard from the intro, we had SDC on the latest episode of the Hoops Cast, and it was easily our best episode. It was a really fun episode where me and Mojo interviewed Zach about his video making process, his break from YouTube, and Mojo asked him what player he would want to play on one-on-one, which led to that straight up evil answer. So check that out, link will be in the description and in the card above. When the Nets moved to Brooklyn in the 2012 season, they had a solid roster. They had a starting lineup of Deron Williams, Joe Johnson, Gerald Wallace, Reggie Evans, and Brook Lopez. Deron was an all-star point guard, but since being traded to the Nets, Williams had a bit of a drop-off, and he was only an all-star once with the Nets, and that was in New Jersey. But still, he was a decent high-teen scorer with a solid assist average. Joe Johnson, aka ISO Joe, was a good scorer, but not at his peak anymore. Gerald Wallace was a very good defensive player. Reggie Evans was, an NBA player, and Brook Lopez was not the three-point sniper that we all know and love him as today. Brook was actually one of the best post scorers in the league, averaging 20 and 7 for many years with the Nets. He was also a very good mid-range shooter. This Nets team, with the addition of Joe Johnson as well as moving to Brooklyn, had a 49 and 33 record after going 22 and 44 in the previous year. But they would lose in the first round of the Chicago Bulls in a 7-game series, a series that actually was the series that made me a Bulls and NBA fan, and in turn, that series is why this video exists. But in the offseason, the Brooklyn Nets ownership really wanted to compete for a championship. Despite having 3 lower-level star players, they lost to a Bulls team that wasn't nearly as talented. So with that, Billy King, one of the worst general managers of all time, if not the worst, made a legacy-defining move, trading multiple first-round picks to the Boston Celtics for 37-year-old Kevin Garnett, 36-year-old Paul Pierce, and 36-year-old Jason Terry. Those first round picks became Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Colin Sexton. Tatum, Brown, and Sexton are all future stars, and Smart is a very good role player and hustle guy. That was the long term of this trade. So what was the short term? It was pretty fucking bad. Kevin Garnett at his age could only average 6 and 6 and play 20 minutes a game. Paul Pierce averaged a mere 5 points per game, and Terry only averaged 5. The team did not get better with these additions. In fact, they actually got worse, losing 5 more games this year than they did in the previous season. They did, however, this year make the second round, beating the Raptors in a 7-game series, and then losing to the Big 3 Miami Heat in 5 games. After this, Paul Pierce walked in free agency to the Wizards. They traded Kevin Garnett back to the team that he won an MVP for, getting back Thaddeus Young in the process. Darren Williams was brought out, and the Nets went into full rebuild mode. But with only a small handful of decent players and no first-round picks for the foreseeable future, they were in for a bumpy ride, and they brought in Bojan Bogdanovic from overseas as well. At this point, Thad, Bojan, Lopez, Mason Plumlee, and not even really ISO Joe were the only assets that they had. And with Brook Lopez's contract and injury history, and Joe Johnson's awful contract with his age and lower production, both of them would be pretty impossible to trade, especially Joe Johnson. So the Nets were thoroughly fucked. But in the 2015 offseason, something huge changed that completely changed the trajectory of the Brooklyn Nets, and that was the hiring of Sean Marks. In the 2016 offseason, the Nets traded Thaddeus Young to the Pacers for the 20th pick, which they used to draft Caris LeVert, and they picked up Spencer Dinwiddie and Joe Harris off of the free agent market. 3 core parts of this Nets team, and they picked up 2 of those parts off of the waivers. Dinwiddie was let go by the Bulls, and Joe Harris let go by the Cleveland Cavaliers. And they turned the solid veteran that they got with Thaddeus Young from the Kevin Garnett trade into Caris LeVert, who was looking like a borderline all-star before he got hurt this season. Sean Marks is a saint. In the next offseason, they traded Brook Lopez to the Los Angeles Lakers for D'Angelo Russell. The Lakers were looking to get rid of D'Lo because Magic Johnson is really bad at being a GM, and the Nets were right there for the taking, getting off of Lopez's contract as well as embracing the youth movement. They also traded for Allen Crabbe and a Portland first-round pick, and with that pick, they drafted Jarrett Allen. So to put this into perspective, in 3 years with Sean Marks, the Nets had traded for 2 late first-round picks and made 2 fantastic selections, getting some steals of the draft with Caris LeVert and Jarrett Allen. They picked up Spencer Dinwiddie and Joe Harris off of waivers, and they traded a 29-year-old injury-prone center for an all-star point guard. What's actually really crazy is when you think about it, the Nets traded a 38-year-old Kevin Garnett for Caris LeVert. They moved KG for Thaddeus Young, who they used to trade for Caris LeVert. Again, Sean Marks is amazing. With this roster, they were bad in the 2017-18 season, mostly due to D'Angelo Russell missing most of the season, but they were much more respectable than they had been in the past. But in the 2018 draft, they picked up Drazen Musa, who hasn't played much yet, but could be very good, and Rodions Kurucs, who was their starting 4 for a good portion of the year. He is a solid stretch 4 who can handle the ball, and he is fairly athletic. Very solid pickup in the second round, and in the 2018-19 season, the Nets were pretty damn good. D'Angelo Russell had his first All-Star season, averaging 21 and 7. Spencer Dinwiddie contended for 6th Man of the Year, averaging 17 points per game off of the bench. Jarrett Allen had a fantastic second season, being one of the best shot blockers in the NBA. Joe Harris shooting 47% from 3. Oh, and there's also fucking Kenny Atkinson. I completely forgot to mention him. Sean Marks also made the great decision to sign Kenny Atkinson, who is a fantastic coach, who also looks like he should be in the cast of The Godfather. But this Nets team was not about the individual. This team had the best culture in the NBA, and with that culture, as well as the team-first mentality, they made the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference and played in a competitive series versus the Philadelphia 76ers. But more importantly, that culture is why Kyrie Irving was so interested in going to Brooklyn, and in turn, why Kevin Durant wanted to follow him there. Now, we can sit here and debate whether or not this team will ever win a championship, especially with the 2 fantastic duos in LA, but you cannot deny that this will be a damn good team once Durant comes back. Even if KD comes back at 70% of what he was, this will still be a damn good team, and Kevin Durant will still be a max level player. Not only because of those 2, but because of the culture, the coaching, and the depth of this team. And when you look at what this team looked like in 2015 versus now, it's night and day. The Nets really could not have been in any worse of a situation than they were in 2015 after Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett were gone. They were practically drained of assets, didn't have any of their first-round picks for the foreseeable future, and their roster was filled out with a couple of valued role players and some bad contracts. And yet, 4 years later, this team is really deep, has a bunch of solid role players, and they have 2, at least 1, superstar level players. Kyrie Irving is debatable. So what does this video teach us? Well, 1, Sean Marks is a living legend, and he deserves way more credit for what the Brooklyn Nets are. I don't see him get too much for it. And 2, culture is very important in the NBA. If you build a team that players would want to play for, well, they'll play for you. Oh, also 3, Billy King sucks. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to check out the latest episode of the Hoopscast. I promise you, if you are a fan of STC, you will really enjoy that podcast. It is easily the favorite podcast that I've ever done. So check that out. Link will be in the description. Like and subscribe, and cue the outro music.